In Michigan, if a court declares you legally incapacitated, a judge can appoint a guardian for you, which means you can no longer make your own legal, medical, or financial decisions. Back in 2021, the Attorney General's Elder Abuse Task Force helped launch bipartisan bills designed to better protect people who are put under guardianship. But those bills never got signed into law, thanks in part to professional guardians who did not want the same changes.
This is not a system designed to help. This is prison.
They took my mom before I knew it.
For 5 years, the 7 investigators have been exposing problems in Michigan's guardianship system.
It's disgusting. Our elderly people shouldn't be a commodity and shouldn't be able to be trafficked by these people.
A judge appointed a professional guardian instead of a family member for Gretchen Summers' Aunt Barb and Uncle Bob back in 2018.
Kept them hostage, took them from their families, locked them behind a 6.5-foot privacy fence, and just drained their estate, researched how to sell off their property.
The guardian billed Bob and Barb's estate for more than $376,000 in fees.
We do want a more transparent guardianship system.
Our investigations helped fuel new reforms crafted by Attorney General Dana Nessel's Elder Abuse Task Force. And in 2021, after years of work, they introduced 4 bills to change the state law.
And we felt as though it would completely change the face of protection of seniors in Michigan.
Here are a few of the things the bills would have mandated. Certification for professional guardians. Judges would have to better explain on the record why they're appointing a professional guardian instead of a family member. And they would have increased the number of times guardians have to visit their wards.
We should be ashamed at how we treat the elderly in this state.
But the bills did not get signed into law. One of the biggest opponents, the Michigan Guardianship Association, a nonprofit advocacy group for professional guardians.
The Guardianship Association especially kept moving the goalpost. So whenever they would bring up a point, and it seemed like a legitimate point, and that point would get addressed, they would say, well, that's not good enough. What about this other thing?
Even though members of the Michigan Guardianship Association, or MGA, were on the Elder Abuse Task Force, the 7 investigators have discovered audio recordings and photos that reveal just how hard the association was working against the legislation. These are pictures taken of a PowerPoint presentation at the MGA's April 2022 conference. You can see in the presentation, their lobbyist, Robert Kennedy, refers to Nessel's task force as the Attorney General's task farce. This is how Kennedy described it in a recording provided to us by someone who attended the conference.
No, that's supposed to say farce, not farce. So it's the AG's task force, as I call it. This has nothing to do with elder abuse. This has everything to do with reforming the practice of guardianship. In our AG's opinion, reform means put you out of business.
During his update about the proposed bills, Kennedy told MGA members how they were constantly calling legislators, and he had other choice words for the task force that's comprised of more than 130 assistant attorney generals, members of the Michigan Supreme Court, and senior citizen advocates.
So, Elder Abuse Task Force, you've heard about it, you've read about it. It's like a circus or a judge comes to your town once in a while.
After we played the recordings for the AG, she removed the MGA representatives from her task force.
For them to call this a farce instead of what it is, which is a very well-intentioned effort to protect as many seniors as possible, is galling. And I hope they're happy they're not going to have a say in this task force anymore.
I don't think the task force is a task farce. I found the members who I dealt with in the Attorney General's office to be very helpful and to be very realistic.
Republican House Representative Graham Filler sponsored the legislation and plans to help introduce the bills again.
After talking truth to what we were working on and some of the compromises we made, we did vote it out of the House Judiciary Committee with bipartisan support. I have confidence going forward that I can find the support in the next caucus.
The Michigan Guardianship Association declined to comment on the task force statements. Their lobbyist released a written statement to us that says in part his use of the word farce, quote, has nothing to do with the work of the task force. There are many good people in the group. He said his reference was related to the name of the task force and said it should have been called the Guardianship Elimination Task Force. The MGA lobbied to have their own bills requiring certification introduced last summer, but those failed as well. The Attorney General says no one wants to eliminate guardians, but those who've lost precious time with loved ones under guardianship say reform does need to happen.
Something has to be done.
Those aren't the only recordings we've obtained of a Michigan Guardianship Association conference. Coming up tonight at 11, you'll see what a probate judge who assigns guardianships told the professional guardians and why the Attorney General is questioning the message he was sending. I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News. The very first guardianship story I did was in 2017. It featured a case from Oakland County's probate court and a judge who tried to prevent us from broadcasting our story. Since then, the Oakland County Probate Court has generated the most complaints to the 7 investigators and to the Attorney General's office. One of the main allegations, families say they can't get a fair shake there because they allege the judges too often side with professional guardians.
How can this happen in America?
The 7 investigators have been documenting examples of guardianships gone wrong across Southeast Michigan for 5 years. Probate judges can appoint a guardian for anyone deemed mentally incapacitated. When you become someone's ward, the guardian has total say over your life, including medical and financial decisions.
Do you feel like there should be more oversight of guardians and conservators?
Yes.
Our reporting caught the attention of Attorney General Dana Nessel, who formed the Elder Abuse Task Force and introduced legislation in the hopes of improving the guardianship system.
Don't we owe that to seniors in our state?
But the bills did not get signed into law, in part because of pushback from some key players in the probate courts. The Michigan Guardianship Association battled against the bills, calling the AG's task force a task farce.
It's so incredibly demeaning.
They're not alone. Oakland County Probate Judge Daniel O'Brien wrote a letter to state legislators urging them not to pass the bills. And now the 7 investigators have obtained video of Judge O'Brien at a recent Michigan Guardianship Association conference, talking about the legislation and giving advice to a room full of professional guardians during a question and answer session.
The damage that has been done to this practice that you guys are all in by legislation, by publicity, is just unfathomable.
The video was taken by a conference attendee and later provided to the 7 investigators. One statement that's raising questions centers on the sale of a ward's home. Guardians often ask the court for permission to sell property. They say it's to pay for the ward's care, but the guardians often get paid in the process.
If you've got family members giving you a hard time, if you're concerned about how it might look, I saw a question at one of the earlier sessions about selling a house. Come to me, get authority. And what it does is it protects you. You can blame me. Say, what can I say? The judge gave me an order. I just asked him what to do. And he said, or she said, to sell it.
It's as though he's giving them permission to do something they know that they shouldn't be doing. That's my takeaway from the way that was phrased.
Judge O'Brien says that's not what he meant.
The appearance there is that you're giving the guardians cover to sell the ward's property.
Yeah, I get that. But I might not let them sell it. That's really the thing. I don't know how you want to put it. I was just cutting to the chase. I tell everyone, not just professional guardians, but any family member, you have a problem. You try to work it out with your brother, your sister, your parent, whatever it is, the professional guardian. If you're not getting satisfaction, file a petition, bring it to me, let me make the decision.
In the video, O'Brien often praises the professional guardians in Oakland County, some of whom have hundreds of wards.
The people in my county are wonderful people.
I hear about Oakland County more than any of the 82 other counties I'm saying that's the perception that people have, is that there is this very cozy relationship between the professional guardians and between the judges, and that regular people are not going to get a fair shake.
Are you as fair to family members as you are to the professional guardians in Oakland County?
I try to be. Yeah. The thing is that if I have to cut somebody off, or if I have to rule against them, they're gonna think I'm being unfair. There's no way around it. But I do my best to remain impartial and just stay on point. And I do that by focusing on the person whose name is on the case.
Judge O'Brien did agree there are problems in the probate system, but he does not agree with the proposed law changes from the AG's task force. He also told us the most important thing you can do if your loved one winds up under guardianship is to speak up.
If you want something, ask me. Put it in writing if you can. If not, show up at the hearing. I'll do my best to follow the law and apply it to the facts.
The guardianship bills are expected to be introduced again in the new legislative session this year. We have much more from both Judge O'Brien and the Attorney General at WXYZ.com. I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News.